just kind of a bit of background about me, so you know where I'm coming from my research. I've been in corporate life for a number of years, a couple of my own businesses, worked for Sage, Pegasus, IBM for 15 years, but also lectured part-time for De Montfort University. So in fact, I've just received yesterday evening my 25 years prize, 25 years guest for working. So and I've been responsible for employability, actually recruiting students into organizations. So I've heard from a spectrum of universities over the years about what they've taught, but most importantly, I've heard the lack of advice that universities have given students on how to articulate what they've learned. We all know that critical thinking, all those aspects are really important, but students aren't taught how to express those correctly in a job interview. So my research has gone a level deeper into looking at specifically the assessment area. So the importance of assessments, there is a myopic focus on student jobs and careers. We know we're in a different epoch at the moment, that students no longer come to university necessarily, only a small amount for that whole enriching experience. There has been an explosion in job assistance at university with employability departments. There has been a change in employability confidence, an adjustment since COVID. Even though we're a number of years away from that is still feeding through. We're still feeling the kind of corollary ramifications of that. And very importantly, there's been a massive growth of students working for SMEs, choosing not to go the corporate route, especially on the commercial side. They are not arrogantly, but they're thinking, no, we're going to decide who we're going to work for. We've got the technical skills now that a lot of it we've learned outside of university. So that coupled with university, we're going to be the ones who decide. And really importantly, there's been a massive fall in students taking a placement year. And employers really recognize that. I remember my 23 years of graduate recruitment. I knew within 30 seconds of a student opening their mouth and articulating their experience, especially when they hadn't said they'd been on a placement year, I knew whether they had or not, just the way, just the lexicon they were using, the language in the description, absolutely I could tell. So this is a bit of an observation and a potential remedy at the end. Some easy things to do. It's not prosaic, but it's some simple observations. So my research is around the process designing enhanced employability related co-created assessments and the guidance of utilizing in an application and interview context. And the three bodies of literature that are focused mainly on so Kolb, Strauss-Howe, generational, and Freeman, stakeholder. So I started looking at who are the influencers, who are the stakeholders in employability. So it's kind of a simple first step. Businesses don't think in this way, but if you ever took an organization into this initial setup to say, this is how we view the student experience, their learning, they would agree. They don't use the word concept or conceptual model, but organizations still think in that way. Let me go on to the next. So basically I looked at three cohorts. So it was a multi-method, qualitative. I looked at SMEs. I looked at a number of graduates and not graduates that I'd taught, but they'd graduated in the previous 5 years, and a number of academics. For the SMEs, it's the FSB, Federation of Small Businesses classification, sub 250 employees, because the statistics show that is a growing trend of trajectory for commercial students. And I wanted them to have previously employed 5+ graduates in the past few years. So I went through the research, multi-layer thematic analysis, and there were some really interesting points that came out. So my research questions, so focus, so this is going a level deeper than my previous talks here, Anshul. So how relevant, this is to the businesses, how relevant do you feel the students' assessments have been for your business? Do you feel, so there was a number of themes underneath. This is my initial theme. How relevant, and it wasn't what they've learned, it was the assessments, and I wanted them to have thought about that and to ponder on when they had consider and reflect on when they'd talked about those with previous students, which very few had engaged in that conversation, because very few had actually articulated the value of their assessments. The curriculum and assessments, were they based on theory and current context, and the relevancy of the assessments in the whole recruitment process, did they feel? Graduates, for the assessments, what assessments did you most value? Did they feel they could take into working life, but also importantly use during their job application process? What do they feel were most attractive to recruiters, which is real kind of interesting, because a lot of them said, I never talked about them. And what value do authentic assessments? So those designed with a business, is co-created, would have added to your university learning experience. Now, I know that from my years of recruiting graduates, and still do consultancy work now with various Midlands organisations. I was over at one in Nottingham, I won't name the company, it's just a few Saturdays ago. They were not wanting to recruit a couple of people internally necessarily, not underhand hide it from people, but they wanted external people, so they wanted it at the weekend when there wouldn't be people around. I know that organisations are pretty much university and subject agnostic. They really are. They yes, unless it's going to be illegal or specifically kind of data coding, very technical, or accountancy practice, it's important then. But for a lot of subjects, they are subject agnostic. And I know that and therefore they almost find it not necessarily irrelevant, but they regard it, a subject as a subject, from one subject for one university to another. They don't really care. What they care about is the assessments, is how has that been applied? Show me how it's been applied. And so then just lastly, the academics. To what extent do they feel it should be designed with the input of SME businesses? And I had to be careful with the academics, not because I was scared, although some people still think I'm an imposter coming from industry, but I had to be cautious because I knew that not many of them had ever talked to a business or ever even seen what kind of skills a graduate job advert looked for. So I had to be real cautious of that. So it was these three areas. The key findings, I'm going through this probably a little quicker than you thought, Anshul, but the key themes: low ability to relate assessments to company and job needs. There was a real articulation by the SMEs firm I conducted. It was anywhere from 30 to about 45 minutes on average for the semi-structured interviews, and they're all videoed and securely stored away. But some very apparent, very stark comments from people: low ability to relate the assessments to a company needs, the need for increased theory application from practical experience. Companies value the theory, especially the agencies. How they view it is actually the models and frameworks and concepts, wouldn't they be brilliant to articulate in front of a prospect that we've got. We could wow them with the company's knowledge because they'd forgotten all their theoretical knowledge from previous decades of education, if indeed they have been to university. Strong need for a placement year substitute, and it wasn't just, you know, a month experience here, a summer job here, but the need for that kind of proxy, that placement, application of learning to a live context, poor understanding commercial structures, retention of core academic concepts through assessments. And the 7, 8, and 9, the interesting ones, I thought, employers interested, only 10% with the learning on average. And again, map the themes, the sentiment analysis, 90% with the assessment. That's what they cared about. Show me how you've put that knowledge into practice. Don't tell me, I don't want the one guy said, I'm not bothered about grades that someone got. Someone could have been having a lousy day, but the smartest person ever. What I care about is show me how you've used that and been effective with that information in the process. The importance of showing and articulating what graduates can achieve through assessments, and the importance of showing and articulating, oh, sorry, I've repeated that again. So what a lot of the research came back and the university. So at De Montfort, I do a number of these, but not all of them. And so the implications that came back from the research, this was an amalgamation of feedback. I'd say it probably went 60% the businesses, 20% from feedback and recommendations from the students, and 20% from the academics. Utilize an authentic assessment spectrum. So don't just have, do not have a case study. There was a very strong feeling, and I didn't mention this in the output, but there was a strong feeling, a few people that were not necessarily negative, but there was a comment that, well, you academics, you spend all your time on focusing on great theory, and the research informed teaching was important, and almost seemed to leave the assessments at the very end as a cursory kind of throwaway thing that you consider, which I wanted to dive in and defend it, but of course I was recording it, so I had to be kind of careful in my response and everything. But that was the kind of feeling that a lot of organizations think it's massively overweighted on the curriculum side, not on the assessment. And for the employers, it's the assessment that really matters. So the spectrum of authentic assessments that will be of value for students to perform. So some of the live in-house projects, a number of people said, why don't you get students to actually concentrate on projects internally at the university that you'd often typically get a temp in for a specific kind of task? You know, surely if you've got, you know, if it's accountancy and accounting areas for some, you know, non-confidential knowledge information, some IP, marketing, the marketing area could always do with extra help and almost that reverse engineering of a student age knowledge and input. The live consultancy projects, actually working with local organizations, it's a societal give back for local companies. What university doesn't want to give back to their local community? And actually having these live, maybe 3-month projects, possibly as an undergraduate or postgraduate equivalent to a dissertation. So the sort of thing that's maybe no literature review, but much heavier on the research and heavier on the analysis and the recommendations. So there is, you know, academic parity at that level 6 or level 7. So a remote live consultancy project, again, benefit for local businesses for free of charge research. We're not allowed to charge. Live situation, module assessments. So module assessments that are based on the foundation of the pedagogy, the concepts and the theories, but are overlaid with a live assessment. So going out, and this is one thing that I particularly do. So in the program that I'm program leader for at De Montfort, as well as the capstone project at the end, which is the live project, I reach out to the module leaders. They don't have to. they own the module, but I say, do you want your project overlaid with a live context? They all love it for the reasons that it increases attendance and attention. We get the guest lecturer to come in either live or give a couple of team sessions. They can relate that. I give them a briefing on the background to the actual module, kind of a summary, and they see the assessment. So they make that link. There isn't the sort of black and white approach, polarized approach. And there'll be a midway through the actual learning for another session with it actually live. There's a lot of Q&A, so they have that live impact, and we get great results. And the value for the business is the top 5% of students will take off any personal details and give those to the businesses. Some lift the information verbatim and put it in their own reports. Placement year assessment, a number of places do that, and the class visit kind of consultancy assessment. Obviously, it involves money, which I'm quite cautious about with at the moment with situations with universities. One of the things, so there's a load ad infinitum information on the internet around a lot of the employer requested skills, but there were 5 things that came out from the research earlier on this year. Passion. Who's got a passion? The idea that it's not, there was one lady that said, it's not how smart the students are that matter, it's how much they want it. And we can tell a mile off how much they want it. And I knew that. I know that feeling. We all know that feeling from interviewing. Yes, there's got to be a baseline of intellect and knowledge and achievement, but it's that passion that matters. Teamwork, really important. We all know this. Communication, so that body language, and one chap said, you could almost do with taking students through a body language course as a bit of a snapshot, or even sending them a few YouTube videos, because there are some glaring errors in how they position themselves, how they conduct themselves. Problem solving ability and the leadership and ownership, really important. So 5 key areas that they map onto a lot of stuff that's out there, but this was kind of recent stuff. Now this approach, I'd considered in the past and introduced it into one of the themes. I wanted to test what businesses thought. Absolutely, they thought, why aren't universities doing this? The idea that a student, that assessments should be designed based on an average. Now we are on a kind of a plateau, an average of what sort of skills that are required in their graduate job. Now, we don't know, especially final year tutors, we don't know which companies are working for, what industry, what geography. But the idea that students should be able to correlate, they should be able to look at that module leaders should be able to look at job adverts and to backwards engineer to say, right, within my subject discipline, there are these areas that seem to repeat, and maybe there's a bit of thematic analysis involved in that, and then to map those into some of their assessments. For the reason that this was the key thing that came out of I wanted to show in this slide. Students, and this came, I picked up this theme in the sampling and then articulated it further in the full research, and I tested it on people, that students to be able to say, I learned this, but I've actually done this in live assignments, or even articulating as, think of it, a 3-month internship, this project that is based on real life. I've learned this, I've done this, and I could do this for you tomorrow. That prosaic, and not in a negative sense. Employers would really value that. For students to be able to say, I've looked through your job adverts and I've mapped my 2, 3 or 4 maybe key assessments onto those skills. I've done this for real. This is live. This isn't classroom. This is live. And this is the sort of thing that you need doing. And then LinkedIn ready assessments. So I thought I'd end on something really simple. The amount of employers that said, I don't want to see, looking around it, I don't want to see a list of grades that people got. It almost means nothing to me. What I want to see is an example of what they've done. That if the idea that if you've done design and graphics course, virtually every assessment you do is LinkedIn ready, and you can upload it. In the area that I work in business and law, in the commercial area, more and more we're moving that way. But of the places that I've been externals out for a number of years, there are some holes, unfortunately, and I'm a real evangelist around LinkedIn ready assessments, because I know from the places that I do consultancy with that that's what they look for. Yeah, they don't look at CVs anymore. Can't be bothered. They'll look at a LinkedIn profile, because they say no one lies on that, and you can put as much information as you want, especially what you've actually done, not the grade, but what you've done at university. And the takeaway, so authenticity in each assessment, individual modules and large projects, publicity ready assessments, things that students can show, they can evangelize, industry input to assessments, actually having industry look at assessments in a certain area, having module leaders go out to industry, to a number of not necessarily even trusted advisors, to say, these are the kind of ways we're assessing our students for these skills. Would this be of value if your future employers potentially have these kind of experience? And then guidance on articulating the benefit, the employability benefit of assessments, actually teaching the lexicon to students of the way to express the value of it. So in time, just about,